moved to the south hemisphere with Marcelo from the University of São Paulo, Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. I will not pronounce the site. How is it pronounced?
Pinheiros.
Pinheiros. Okay, that was not that hard as I thought.
No, no problem.
Perspectives on urbanity in São Paulo of the 16th and 17th centuries.
There we go. Okay, good morning or good afternoon. It's better now, it's midday. And to everyone. I will be discussing here today as part of my ongoing master's degree dissertation, and I will be discussing São Paulo under a perspective of archaeological urbanism. And I'm going to look into the Pinheiros 2 site that's currently my main focus in my master's degree, to observe evidences of urban complexity among the archaeological record. The Pinheiros 2 site is located in São Paulo, University also, and it's and today is in a very highly dense urban area, as you can see here. And it's close to one of the main rivers that cross through the city, the River Pinheiros, that takes after the name of the site. And this is São Paulo today. I mean, when people think of São Paulo, it's one of the largest cities in the world, and people think of buildings, concrete, glass, and there's no doubt that today this is a city. And however, this wasn't always the case. It was São Paulo took a lot of time in developing its urbanity. As you can see here, this is the first map that São Paulo appears, and it appears right over there. Like a small footnote, and this was 80 years after it was founded, because the Portuguese arrived in the 1500s, and São Paulo was founded, its first settlement was founded in 1554. But only in 1631 this map appeared, and you can't tell very little about it, because this map is basically of the captaincy of São Vicente, that was kind of the state at the time, during a lot of time, map-wise, São Paulo was represented in this form: small, footnote, very sidelined in the colony. So, as I told you, through historical and archaeological sources, I would contribute to the discussion regarding São Paulo under an archaeological perspective. Could be considered a city before its official elevation to the status in 1711. Because that's when the Portuguese decided they would finally call São Paulo a city. But maybe São Paulo was behaving as one before this period. So we made a use of an attribute table elaborated by Michael Smith in 2016, and took under consideration those by Monica Smith, Colin Renfrew, and all these people that you can see here. And I would also verify if some of these aspects that were brought to light could also be seen in the archaeological record in Pinheiros 2, as we took into consideration all these, like population, area, palaces, architecture, craftsmanship, fortification gates. You can see that all there. And we took into consideration if they could be quantified, if they were present or absent. If they had a scale, if they could have a scale of intensity. And after an extensive research through articles by archaeologists, architects, geologists, and a very interdisciplinary research, we could verify 16 of these attributes, 16 of these 22 attributes. And according to Smith, 12 would be sufficient to be considered a city. However, how many of those we could see in the archaeological record in Pinheiros? Because as Tino also mentioned, that they have this problem in Zozijek. São Paulo also has this problem. The modern city completely surpassed over the colonial city. So we don't have so many evidence of the first colony. The Pinheiros site was excavated in a context of preventive archaeology, as you can see one of the images of the excavation. And inside in the site, we also managed to find 9 pit kilns. The pit kiln number 2 I represented here, and the 3D scan of the same pit kiln. of a total of 9. A total of over 57,000 artifacts were unearthed during these 3 years of excavation, among which about 40,000 were ceramic fragments. And the remainder of the other typologies were faience, glass, porcelain, as you can see here. But the ceramic production was our main focus, since there were 9 pit kilns, and it was partly a pottery works. We also took 17 samples to be dated through thermoluminescence in Pinheiros. Most of them, the average dates ranged from 1546 to 1687. I also highlighted in blue the samples that were taken. They were taken from within the pit kilns. Therefore, they have a better chance of indicating the period in which the pottery works were in operation. Here is another representation of the same dates, just to better point out the concentration of dates between the 16th and 17th centuries. They were most of them. To understand the pottery works, you also get to understand the production. And we got to see several of the vessels being done with using several techniques, not only one. And the molded, most of them had presented a molded section in the bottom half, and a top section being finished by modeling. And this kind of production using several techniques also relates to what Sinopoli calls workshop industry, which she defines as an increase in scale of production, changes in ceramic technology, production using wheel or molding, introduction of kilns, standardized production, specialized craftsmen or craftswomen. And so we could observe a mercantile intent in what we found in Pinheiros too. We also got to find some fragments that were rushed and had presented rudimentary and repetitive patterns, showing that people kind of shown lack of care in what they had in the final product. As we can see here, in the first image, we can see some finger marks on the inside of the pot, proving it was poorly finished, and this happened quite commonly. Poorly finished appliques were also found. For example, this one, they not even finished fully attaching it. And large temper was also found in several fragments. I'm not going to bore you with the statistics, but if anyone wants to know statistics, please feel free to ask later. But who was making these pots? We managed to see several European shapes. For example, this cake pan, this frying pan, and these jars, because the indigenous people that from Brazil did not produce these kind of shapes. However, the indigenous and African patterns could be observed in decoration, since there were several incised patterns that relate to these ethnicities. Some might say it's a mameluca production. That's a Brazilian term for the social mix between indigenous peoples and Europeans. As you can see here, Szymanski, one of the researchers in Brazil that's leading expert in African influences, showed that the diamond patterns that can be seen in Pinheiros over here, they could be related to body scarifications and ceramic decoration in Central Africa, as can be seen here and here. One of the other interesting aspects that also related to African influence was this only shirt. This was a single child in Pinheiros that this point out to a Congo cosmogram. This one is especially quite interesting, the story, because the cross within the applied circle represents the daily journey of the sun around the world of the living and the world of the dead, and the water represented by the horizontal line divides both worlds. The circle represents the idea that life is endless, a perpetual cycle. But this was the only one that was directly related to it. But it's also important to note that almost 5 million enslaved individuals were brought to Brazil from Africa between 1839 and 1856, therefore is expected to find a lot of African influence in Brazilian material culture. However, it's not that common to be found in São Paulo, because São Paulo took some more time to receive enslaved individuals from Africa. We had a predominance of indigenous labor in São Paulo, even though there are records of African individuals by 1612 and 1620. So it's more common to associate these diamond patterns to what can be produced by the Guarani and the Tupi also in the region. As you can see, they also produce similar incised patterns. The presence of red engobins in the ceramics also relates to this indigenous influence, because it was extremely common among the Guarani to use this red paint inside the vessels, and this appears it appeared in several shirts in Pinheiros too as well. This is just a small demonstration of how many ethnicities and languages could be found in Brazil during the colonies. There are over 900 references to various ethnicities and languages, and this map is actually only from 1981. So there's probably more. There's probably more, and it also shows several of the migration patterns that occurred. So. This is just to show how much of indigenous culture the Portuguese encountered when they arrived, and how much of their culture can be intertwined with the colonial experience in Brazil. So, in conclusion, what we got so far from this project is that Pinheiros 2 represents an array of influences, and this variety of influences represents much of what São Paulo's identity was, and especially with the identity related to the Mameluco. The production was standardized, related to mercantile production and economic goals, and the dates we pointed out earlier during our attribute table, they coincide with the dates obtained with the thermoluminescence datings. Therefore, the Pinheiros 2 is part of this process of urbanization in São Paulo. We were able to conclude that through what we saw in the ceramic production, that 5 of the attributes established earlier to identify urbanism could be found in Pinheiros, such as craftsmanship, markets and stores, social diversity, identity, and imports with faience, glass, and porcelain, and much more. References. Just a few acknowledgements to my scientific advisor who helped me in the project, to Paulo Zanettini that also helped in the concession. The people in Brazil that had patience with me analyzing my material, to the Museum of Archaeology and copies, and especially to the EAA that they provided me with the Oscar Montelho's grant, so that of paramount importance for me to be here, and to all of you, thank you very much.